Yeah, so welcome everyone. The second session is about to start. We have Warner Chaves, Microsoft MVP for Data Platform, and one of the few Microsoft Certified Master for SQL Server. Uh, he's a principal consultant at PTN. He's actually sort of my technical boss, right? Yeah, so uh, it's all yours, Warner.
All right, well, thank you guys for joining us. I know it's late for you guys. It's early for me. Nice sunny day here in Canada. Appreciate it joining from the other side of the world to just learn with me, because I've learned quite a bit in the last couple of weeks as well about Azure Synapse Analytics. All right, so let's kick it off. I'm gonna skip this. We're sharing the slides anyway, and Pio just gave me the intro. So real quick, and by the way, I only have like 6 slides, so you guys can, get the most out of the session just by basically playing around with the service with me through the demos, right? So what we're gonna do with the big topic is, I have just a little bit of slides to kind of like intro what the concept is of Synapse, and that's it. Then we'll just do like I'll be your tour guide for the current implementation of Synapse Analytics, right? So keep in mind that today is a beginner session, right? I'm just going to give you guys a tour of Synapse, the main features, discuss some of the main design ideas that you can already see through the product, and hopefully just pique your interest about the service, and some of you will, go create your own workspace and play around with it. So that would be my main goal today. That some of you will feel enough curiosity to go and fire up a Synapse workspace and play around with it. So we'll just we'll go over the workspace, the SQL pools, Spark pools, and some of the other integrations that are being built, which are pretty neat, I have to say. Hopefully you guys will agree with me, right? So just prerequisites, really. I feel like, to get going with Synapse, you just really need to know how to use BI tools or be working with a BI department in general. If you ever connected an Excel even to a database, you're really pretty much ready to work with Synapse. And obviously the use case of Synapse is to work with data warehousing or / a big data workload, right? So that's pretty much it. But other than that, it doesn't really require a lot of in-depth knowledge, which is really cool. And that's some of that will be pretty clear from the demo as well. So just quick, like I said, I want to set the stage as to why Microsoft created Synapse in general, right? So let's talk about a little bit about the current challenges that people usually see with business intelligence projects. First is that we have a constantly growing size and sources of data, right? This data is being generated at an incredible rate, and it's coming from everywhere, right? It's not just coming from operational systems anymore. It's coming from analyzing customer behavior. It's coming from telemetry from devices. It's coming from third-party data providers and so on, right? And then what we see with most of our clients, for example, at Pythian, and with the market at large, is that the data just is all over the place. People end up with hundreds, sometimes thousands of different databases, network shares. They have some of the databases on-prem. They have some of them in the cloud. It really lives all over the place, right? And then you couple this phenomenon of the exploding data rate and data being everywhere with the user expectations as well, right? So as technology advances, the user expectations advance as well. And users just want more, and they want it done quicker, right? So they want to see more of their data integrated to take better decisions, and they don't want to wait a long time for IT to turn around and produce a new report type of thing, right? They want it to be done faster. The other thing as well, and this is more of a user experience trend, is that things are moving towards more interactivity, right? Users want to have access to the data and be able to manipulate it, not just to be given a PDF style report, right? If some of you that have worked with business intelligence tools for a long time probably can tell the huge difference between, let's say, working with SQL Server 2008 reporting services compared to working with something like Power BI or Tableau today, right? We're going from an experience that was mostly a static PDF style experience to something that's very interactive, right? And then on top of all these other things, all these challenges, we also have to deal with security requirements. Right nowadays, it's very important for companies to be compliant, to be able to prove that they handle the data properly, and so on. Right. So having an integrated place is an easier way to prove all these things than just having your data absolutely everywhere, right, and distributed amongst thousands of databases. So Microsoft is betting for all these challenges. Microsoft is basically betting that it's not just a technology solution, right? Because technology, we can say that technology is there with SQL Data Warehouse. It has been there with Spark as well. But the magic sauce really is the very tight tool integration. And we're going to see that in, like I said, hopefully in the demos. Um, right? That the really big difference here is not that they just put a new face on SQL Data Warehouse and Spark, but is the way that they are planning to integrate it all, right? So Synapse is a new service and it is public preview, so whatever we see today might change and some of the things are missing right now. But it bundles the entire data engineering experience in one workflow, right? So the idea is that you can go into your Synapse workspace and you don't need to deploy um, another tool to be able to do full data engineering end to end, from data source all the way to visualization or collaboration, right? Um, the vision is not fully complete yet because the service is still in public preview, but so far you can really already get where they're going with it. The other thing as well, the Synapse does really well, is that it takes away the need to decide on all these different components and how to glue them together, right? So instead of, well, I have to sit down and decide, do I need a data warehouse? Do I need just a regular SQL database? Do I need data lake storage? Do I need Spark? Should I use Databricks? If you don't have a good use case to deviate from what Synapse offers, then you're just ready to go. You deploy the workspace, you just use what Synapse already offers and integrates, and that's it. You have a full enterprise data platform right there. Right? So the workspace, the concept of the workspace is basically an amalgamation or bundle of all these tightly integrated services, right? So at the bottom of it is the core storage, that is Data Lake Storage Gen 2, right? Some of you that might not be so familiar know that this is actually the second generation of data lake storage. Microsoft tried to do a specific storage implementation for data lake that's called data lake storage, obviously Gen 1, and it didn't really take off for various reasons. First of all, for Microsoft itself, it was kind of hard to deploy globally their regular blob storage and then at the same time deploy globally a different storage solution. It never really went too far that way. And then it wasn't as easily accessible because it didn't share the same API as the regular storage. It was done through a different type of service. I don't know if some of you might remember, it was called USQL and Data Lake Analytics. And again, it didn't really take off because it required to learn yet again something new, right? So they scrapped that. They created this new generation of data lake storage that sits on top of blob storage, so it's already available globally. It uses, or it's really meant to use the open source stack or tools that already exist out there, like Spark. You don't have to learn something new. And if you do have never used Spark, the notebook experience I'll show you and some of the integrations in the graphical interface make it really easy for you to become dangerous really quick. So that's really good as well. And on top of the data lake storage, which I said is like the core storage component here, there's the idea that you have Spark pools if you need to do compute through a Spark engine, or use the idea of SQL pools. So if you need to do compute through just the regular relational SQL Server engine. And then on top of that, like I said, they want to provide a end-to-end workflow inside the same workspace. They have integrations with Data Factory to be able to do orchestration or movement of data or ETL. And there will also be an integration with Power BI so that you can do, like I said, end-to-end all the way to visualization inside the same workspace. Right now, the integrations go as far as Data Factory, Power BI, and in what is available right now in public preview, Power BI is not yet baked into it, but it will be. I mean, Microsoft has shown internal demos where they already have a version that's baked in with Power BI, but in the version right now that is in public preview, there's Power BI piece is not fully integrated yet. All right, and that's all I have for slides. Like I said, I didn't want to make it a slide-rich presentation, considering, that's all about getting to know Synapse itself. So let's just jump into the demo. So let me switch here to my Synapse Workspace. Hopefully you guys can see the Synapse Workspace just fine. If at any point I disconnect or you stop visualizing it, please just unmute and let me know. All right, so this is what you get when you go into your Synapse Workspace. All right, this is like the welcome screen, and it does tell you, ingest, explore, analyze, or visualize, which is Power BI. Right now, it'll come up with a Power BI separate window as well. Again, this will all be integrated in time. Something before we dive in is to keep in mind just a little bit about how Synapse actually is built, which is very interesting too, because just deploying the workspace itself doesn't have any cost other than the nominal cost of having a storage account that gets created for your Synapse workspace, which is really if you don't really use it, it's just it's literally cents on a dollar. Because this is something else that a lot of people had issues with. For example, with SQL Data Warehouse was, if I use SQL Data Warehouse, even if I don't use it and I pause it, I still pay for a baseline of 1 terabyte of storage, which is about, I believe it was about $250 to $300 a month, right? And if you just want to play around, you're not going to pay $250 a month just to have a paused SQL Data Warehouse, right? It doesn't make sense. Synapse, on the other hand, allows you to have the Spark pools and the SQL pools on demand so that you can boot up your Synapse workspace, you can play around with it for a few hours, and that's it. You only pay for those few hours that you were playing with it. Maybe, at the end of the month, you have a bill for $10, $15 that, if you are strong and passionate about this area of the data world, then for learning experience and working with the latest and greatest tools, $10 to $15 is really a great bargain to get you up and going and learning some of this, right? So I think that's really interesting and smart how they changed their cost model as well. So I think that's going to pay off in dividends for them. All right, so to access the main things here for Synapse, they have this left hand panel, and we're going to walk through all of these and what all of these do in detail. So first one it says here is data, okay? So the most important thing here, and you guys will see there's a working area here already with some notebooks that I already have open, but normally you could have these closed, for example. Yeah, just going to change this. And this is what it will look like, right? So you get this to data. Now there's the concept of workspace data, which is the data that is linked to the pools, and then there's also concept of linked data. And we'll look at both of those. So let me just put this here. And you'll see something very interesting here. For example, I have, if you look here, there's two different categories of SQL that I have, right? There's one that says SQL pool and one that says SQL on demand. This SQL pool is the one that's the direct successor to data warehouse, or what we would know as Azure SQL Data Warehouse. This SQL pool will use actual dedicated data warehouse storage. It can be paused, and when you run it, when you start it, you get your dedicated resources. It is not on demand. If you start this SQL pool right here, the one that says SQL pool, the moment that it starts to bill you, even if you're not querying it, right? On the other hand, we have this new one. This is a new type of SQL compute that was introduced with Synapse, right? It says SQL on demand. This SQL on demand is basically the same DW engine, but it only activates when you query it and you only pay by CPU. Now, there is a trade-off right now, so it's not exactly the same. The trade-off is that this SQL on-demand pool can only go and look at data that is sitting on the data lake Gen 2, okay? So this SQL on demand does not have access to the same data that is on the SQL dedicated SQL pool. Right now, we don't know what they're going to do in the future. Maybe in the future they will enable access from SQL on demand to also the regular SQL Data Warehouse SQL Server storage. But right now, the SQL on demand only has access to what's on the Data Lake Gen 2 storage, so files basically, okay? And then there's a couple of different things here. So again, you have databases, right? And we have these two databases that are part of my Spark cluster, right? One of them is just the default database that gets created when you boot up a Spark cluster. You can put data in the default database if you want. There's nothing wrong with that. But most people will just use dedicated databases inside their Spark cluster, pretty much just how you would use a database, a user database inside your SQL Server as well, right? Now, keep in mind as well, for example, here you can have a browse experience too, but if I open this up, you guys remember this is my regular SQL pool, right? And I don't have it up and running. I almost never boot it up because I don't want to be paying for it in my demo account, to be honest. So if I go and I try to boot up the tables, any of these objects, they will all just fail because I don't have my SQL pool up and running, right? Now, if I go to SQL on demand, that actually does respond because, again, it's SQL on demand, right? So I don't have to actively start it or stop it. It's always active for me to do things with it, right? I don't have to go out and go start, stop, or whatever. The moment that I query it, it wakes up, and the moment that you stop querying it, you stop paying for it. So these tables that you see right here, right, like C nations, for example, to you or to the regular user, this just looks like a regular table, right? You have the DBO dot, so you have a schema and table name notation. You have the columns that use the SQL Server data types, integer, char, integer, varchar, right? So it does look exactly the same, but this table lives in Data Lake Gen 2, right? It is not an actual table that lives in like MDF, NDF data files, right? So it's something else to keep in mind, right? Because right now all the storage from SQL on demand is in Data Lake Gen 2. Right? But other than that, the table itself just behaves in the same way. You can query it in the same way as any other SQL table. Now, something else that is very interesting that you'll see here is that Microsoft has added what they call a gesture, which is depending on where you are in the Synapse interface, it'll give you common actions for that particular node, let's say. So if I'm in a table here, it can actually generate, a SQL script, for example, select top 100 rows, and it'll just, do it for you, kind of like how you would do it in Management Studio as well. So the idea again here is to make people, and you can run this if you want, people that are not so familiar with the Synapse interface or so familiar with SQL itself, then they will be able to just really quickly get up and running, right? Let's see here. Oh, I don't know why I don't have the results. How come? Is there any filter here? Did I delete this? I might have deleted the files that this was based on. Yeah, I guess so. I'll have to check and see how this was defined. But again, this is another thing because these external tables live off of the data that's inside the data lake itself, if you have the definition, but you deleted the actual underlying data, then this can happen to you too, right? So yeah, I'm always playing around with my demo environment. So yeah, not surprised. But something to keep in mind, right? In SQL Server, if you deleted the table, you wouldn't be able to query it, obviously. But in Synapse and SQL on demand, because the definition of the table is decoupled from the storage, if you deleted like this, the folder where this data was, then yeah, it is, you know, it could be that you just don't have anything in it, right? All right, what else here? So let me discard this. And then you can see here in the Spark side as well, you can also query the Spark side. And you can see I have already a few tables there as well on the Spark side too. And we'll see something very interesting about this Cosmos machines table later on in the demo as well. Okay, so that's the built-in database workspace experience here. Now, apart from the data that actually lives inside your SQL Synapse and Spark Synapse pools, there's also this concept here of linked data. So basically, linked data is data that you're bringing in to your Synapse workspace from other Azure services, right? So you see here, for example, this storage account is my primary, the data lake account I have assigned to my Synapse workspace. Then I have a Cosmos DB database that I linked to Synapse, which I'm going to show you guys later in how it can be integrated, which I think is pretty cool. And I have also these data sets here. And these are, if you never use Azure Data Factory, Azure Data Factory uses the concept of defining data sets, and then you manipulate those data sets in your pipelines. So that's something else that's visible here through the Synapse workspace, right? So you can link Azure Data Factory data sets as well, and you can manipulate them through Synapse too. And then you can see you get actions as well associated with them, right? Like, for example, I can open this data set and I can see what it was. So this data set, for example, was a linked service to my default storage, and it's basically saying pick up all the files that are inside the Synapse HammerDB path, right? And you can do the same with like the other ones you see. And the reason why this is here actually is because I was copying a bunch of files from blob storage that I have in another Azure account into my data lake storage that I have on Synapse. So that's why I had this here. Okay, so that's the Data Explorer. Now we'll keep going here on the left hand, and then we'll come back and run some more things, okay? So there's also this develop experience. So the Synapse workspace allows you to save a few things. So you can see here, I can create a bunch of different things. Let's zoom in right here so you guys can see well. So you can create a SQL script. You can create a notebook, which is based on Jupyter notebooks. You can create data flows. These are basically what is the data flow experience inside Azure Data Factory. And you can create Spark jobs as well if you want to write Scala or Python or Java, and you want to execute a Spark job, submit it through the Synapse workspace, you can do that as well. And the cool thing about it, of course, is that the actual scripts for whatever it is that you create, you can actually save it in your workspace, right? So you'll be able to save it in your workspace, and you'll be able to share them as well, right? So the workspace can be a shared experience inside your organization, right? So you could share scripts with other people, or give them permissions to the same workspace so everybody can have the same scripts and notebooks and whatnot, right? Right now, something that I have to say, for example, is that I would like to see some ability to organize this better. There isn't right now like a capability to easily, like you can see, there's no easy way to create folders, for example, because I would like to have something that says, you know, I have a folder for my SQL scripts related to loading or for my external table definitions, and another folder SQL scripts for my analytical SQL queries. And you could do the same with the notebooks too, right? I want notebooks that are related to my customer data or notebooks that are related to our order processing data. So that's not something that would be neat, obviously, and would really help in terms of that collaboration, but it's just not there yet, right? So keep in mind, like I mentioned before, this is all public preview. Down the line, I would not be surprised if we get a better sharing experience in terms of sharing these artifacts, right? Something else that is not here yet that I would expect as well down the line very soon would be some integration here between Synapse and GitHub, for example, if you wanted to version your notebooks or version your scripts. Keep in mind, for example, something like Azure Data Factory already has an integration with GitHub, and considering that Microsoft owns GitHub, I wouldn't be surprised if that's just, they're working on that for sure. All right, so that's the develop part. Then there's the orchestrate part, which is basically the data factory piece, right? So you have the different pipelines. You can see here, you can create a pipeline, or there's also a wizard, which is a copy data wizard. And it'll just, if you pick the copy data wizard, it'll just walk you through the different, pick a source, pick a destination, and it'll help you copy data. Just because copying data obviously is the most common task, then it has its own wizard. Then there's also this monitor tab so that you can see what's going on in your workspace. So you can see, for example, here, there's a pipeline run that I did when I copied a bunch of the files that I wanted into my Synapse Workspace. And if you can check here, you can look at the details of what happened in your pipeline run and how long it took, and you can look at the details. See, for example, here I was telling you guys I copied a bunch of data from my this blob storage account that I had. I copied it into my data lake storage. As you can see, it was actually a cross region copy, right? I had my data in East US and I moved it into Canada, which is where the Synapse workspace is. And I copied 1.2 terabytes of data, and it copied in about 373 megabytes per sec, which, doing it from East US to Canada Central is pretty good speed for copying, right? I think. And if you look at, it gives you the some of the stats here. Something that's pretty cool as well is that these are auto-tuned, right? So you can see here, I did not have to specify to use these data units. This is the compute measurement that Azure uses for Data Factory, and I didn't have to specify the parallelism. These numbers, 32 and 16, were auto-resolved by the Data Factory engine, which is, it's pretty neat, right? Yeah, so this was all done automatically for me, which is pretty cool, because then means you don't have to really start playing with the parameters or thinking, oh, how many threads should I use, or how much compute power should I use. If all you're interested is in getting the job done in the fastest time, you can let the system tune that for you, right? Which I thought was pretty cool. Yeah. All right. Yeah, and then what else you get here? Well, you get a little bit of information, metadata on the work that was done, right? So this is for case of pipeline runs. There's this other concept of triggers, right? So I don't have any triggers, but I'll walk through what the idea of triggers is. So for example, if I go to orchestrate, let me see, where is the triggers? Is it manage? Yeah, triggers. So the idea of triggers is that if you create a pipeline, you can actually, like the name says, start it, trigger it based on some condition, right? So I'm gonna go here to create trigger. And then you can see here, well, I name it whatnot, but then there's a couple of different things you can do, right? You can set a schedule for your pipeline. So a trigger will just be, every 5 minutes, trigger the pipeline, literally. Um, you can have a tumbling window of time, right? Or you can also do an event. So let me show you guys. It's interesting here what the event looks like. So the idea of the event is to trigger pipelines based on something that has been placed in your storage account, because a lot of, obviously, we're dealing with a Synapse Workspace. The vast majority of events will be about moving data in or out of somewhere to put it in your Synapse Workspace. So right now the GUI experience here is to create events like, a blob was created or a blob was deleted, right? Like a new file was placed or a file was deleted, and then do something with it, right? And you can put the path here, or the path ends with, so you have some sort of wildcard, so that if a new file is placed in your data lake storage account, for example, that's orders, maybe it's like orders underscore and a date. So you can have like orders underscore and a prefix, right, that begins with like this. And then when the file is placed there, then your pipeline will trigger and it'll end up moving the file into like a processed folder, so that that's it, right? That the pipeline doesn't get triggered again. Next time that the orders underscore something date file is placed, again, the pipeline gets triggered. So that's obviously, if you can do that, it's more efficient than just waking up. Let's say you wake up your pipeline every 2 minutes just to see if there's a file, right? Instead of doing that, you just set up an event. So whenever there is a file, the pipeline will wake up, right? So that's something that's very interesting as well. Okay, so you have this concept of the triggers, and this concept of triggers is from Data Factory. It's just been basically embedded into Synapse as well. Okay. So that was in the monitor piece. I'll show you guys a little bit more. There's also the idea of you can monitor this, what's known as an integration runtime, whether it's available or not. Integration runtimes are basically the Data Factory engines. So this is, you guys can see here, this is an Azure integrated runtime, integration runtime. So it is up and running, but you could have what is known as a self-hosted. I don't have any self-hosted right now, but you can have what is known as a self-hosted integration runtime. So what that is, the self-hosted integration runtime is basically a program. It's like a gateway that you have on your own environment or your own virtual network in Azure, right? If for some reason you need to host your own Data Factory engine because of security reasons or because of network connectivity or whatnot, then you can register that Data Factory engine with your Synapse Workspace. And you will be able to see the status here, whether it's up and running, or maybe you have your VM that has your on-prem integration runtime shut off, so it'll just not be available. So this is what monitoring. Obviously, I mean, the whole term of monitoring is that we want to see what's going on, right? You can also monitor here issues with your Spark pool. So you can see here things that have canceled, things that have failed for whatever reason. You can find them here as well. And then you'll be able to do the same for a SQL on demand. The only caveat here is you can see here, it says the request history for SQL on demand is coming soon. Only the running requests can be seen at this time. So right now only shows you what is actively running. It does not show any history, but the plan, of course, is to show history. It literally says right there, right? It's coming soon. And finally, we have this concept of managing the resources, right? And this is where you basically configure all your different settings, right? So we have SQL pools here, and you see I have two pools, right? I have my SQL on demand, status is online, size is just automatic, and I have this other pool that I don't have running right now. This is a regular SQL pool, and it's currently paused, and I just set it to the smallest size. Even if I unpause it, it'll just be a DW100. But so this SQL pool right now, it's paused, right? But keep in mind, when you deploy a SQL pool, you're going to be paying for that baseline amount of storage. Now, I don't worry too much about it because, truth be told, I'm using my MVP subscription for this. So yeah, they're going to charge that 250 per month, but it's just going to come off of my MVP subscription, which Microsoft is pretty generous about in terms of Azure consumption. But if I was just, myself learning in my own subscription, you don't have to create the SQL pool at all. You can just have a SQL on-demand pool, right? And the SQL on-demand pool will not charge you if you're not querying it. Okay, so don't be scared just because you see this. Well, I thought you said it was really cost effective, and then you show me in the demo that there's a SQL pool, and even if it's paused, it's going to charge me. Yes, but that's because I created this SQL pool. You don't have to create a SQL pool in your own workspace. You can just live with the SQL on demand and pretty much get almost all the same benefits of the Synapse Workspace, right? The SQL pool is when you have a real workload and you want your dedicated resources when you spin up, right? If you're just learning, the SQL on demand is more than enough, right? And you can create new ones, right? So this is something interesting. I'll just show you guys. You can create new ones. I could create a new one here if I wanted to. Pick the amount of compute that I wanted, and this basically will create a new Azure SQL data warehouse. Now, I'm not going to do it, obviously, but you can do it. So technically, you could have, let's say, 3 data warehouses inside your one Synapse workspace, depending on, let's say you have a data. This is obviously only for clients that are really using this at scale, but you could have like a data warehouse for the marketing department, data warehouse for the procurement, data warehouse for finance, and so on, right? If you were really to, again, just deploy this at scale. And then at the same time, you can do the same with Spark. You can see I have this demo pool right now. Now, the interesting thing about how this works for Spark is that it works, you can set it up with an auto pause. I'm just going to zoom in real quick. Mine is disabled right now because of the demo, right? I wanted to be able to not worry about my Spark pool going down because I'm presenting for you guys. But normally I just leave this as enabled, and I have it set. You can set this up to 5 minutes idle to shut off. I have it set to 15 because when I'm playing with it, 15 minutes sounds reasonable to me. In a production environment, depending on how this gets used, you could set this to be, let's say, an hour idle. So you know that, for example, the first person to come into work that day and starts playing with the notebooks, they'll just have to wait a little bit longer. It takes about 30 seconds to a minute, I found, for the Spark pool to spin up. And that will be just the first person that does the access in the morning, kind of like wake it up. And then you could set it, to maybe say 1 hour idle, or if you're afraid of lunchtime, you could set it to 2 hours idle, so that when the last person leaves or stops working for the day, 2 hours later, the Spark pool will just pause itself and you stop paying for it, right? So that's pretty cool because it's integrated as well. And you can always, you can scale it as well if you wanted to create bigger node sizes, right? I have it set to the minimum, which is 3 nodes, because I don't want to, spend a ton of money in my Azure subscription. But you can go all the way to like a lot, right? You can go all the way to 200 Spark nodes, which, it'll probably be enough for the vast majority of workloads. And this limit of 200, I mean, if you have a truly massive workload that you need, I don't know, let's say 400 Spark nodes, as long as you have the money, you can call Azure support and they will try to accommodate. They'll probably ask you what you're trying to do as well. But if you can prove that you will be able to pay for it, then I'm sure support can bump this up if necessary. All right. So that's something pretty neat. And then the other thing is the link services, like I mentioned, right? If you define other services, for example, this is my Azure Blob Storage. Like I mentioned, I was doing that copy that we saw in the monitor. So I had to define my source Blob Storage, so it's there. I defined the Cosmos DB account as well, which I'll show you in a little bit. And the rest is just some of the default stuff. For example, this Azure Synapse Analytics, formerly SQL Data Warehouse, is just basically the connection to that SQL Data Warehouse. So these two are the own Synapse Workspace resources itself, right? And Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2. Okay. You can see the triggers, you can see the integration runtimes. I only have the one that comes with Azure automatically. Then you can grant access. Here, you guys only see myself. I haven't, this is just my individual subscription. But if you were working in an actual company, then you can give access to Synapse to people or groups or managed identity. Um, Anything that is integrated with Azure AD, right? So if I wanted to add here, there's several different roles. You guys can see right now there's 3 roles split between either your full workspace, or you just want to work with the SQL part, or you're just going to work with the Spark part, okay? Then you will be able to search here as well. And then finally, there's this concept of managed private endpoints, which is just a way for Synapse to connect to other resources, right? So it's basically an endpoint that will provide a private IP address to connect to an external Azure resource that is deployed, right? So in this case, you can see it's SQL on demand and the SQL. Now you might be wondering, how come these have private IP endpoints? Well, the reason for this is because you have a managed network from Microsoft where the workspace goes, and these actual services, the SQL Data Warehouse and SQL Data Warehouse, SQL on Demand, they are implemented as managed services by Microsoft too, right? But Microsoft doesn't just deploy them literally inside your Synapse workspace. They deploy it on their own server farms that are dedicated to these services, and then they create this concept of the private endpoint from the Synapse workspace into those resources. Now, the nice thing about this, of course, is that you personally don't have to manage it, right? When you create your Synapse workspace and you create the pools, Microsoft, under the covers, Azure, creates the necessary private endpoints to make the connectivity possible, right? All right, so let me go a little bit here just to show you guys just a little bit of how this all works. For example, if I open this, I already did this before. So I created a master key. This is the SQL on demand. So now that we were talking about with Pio about the master keys and all these things, kind of goes with the previous session. You guys can see I just put a dummy password here. But interesting, like you can see, this is SQL on demand, but I'm able to create things like master keys, right? And I'm able to create things like credentials, right? So keep in mind, for example, here, if I scroll down and let me zoom in for a second, you see here I created a database scope credential called Synapse Identity, with the identity being managed identity. What does that mean? So what that means is that basically I am saying that when I use this credential, I want my SQL query to authenticate itself as the Synapse workspace itself. And I don't have to manage the actual Synapse workspace. There's no password or anything. As long as I'm running inside the Synapse workspace, it will be using this managed identity, right? And then you can see, for example, then if I keep scrolling down, I have this create external data source. That's just Synapse. And what it does is, again, I'm just saying this is my data lake that is part of Synapse, and just use my Synapse identity to access it, right? And then I create a file format, external file format, which is a pipe delimiter. And then I created a different file format, which is a Parquet one, right? So I have this Parquet one. And again, this is all integrated. I can run it inside SQL on demand with no issues. These file formats will live on the SQL on demand database that I use. And you can see here I create this external table called nation, right? With that data source, the file format. I specify the different types. And this all goes back to, we saw it on the data catalog as well, right? And then this is integrated from integrated into the workspace, right? So I can run this, and you can see I have the data here, right? So I have the different countries here. It's all integrated into the workspace, and you guys can see I didn't All the previous stuff I had already run before. I ran it days ago, and it stays there, right? It's not just because it's SQL on demand, it doesn't mean that it's not persistent, right? It is still persistent. It's just that it's not dedicated SQL resources, right? But the keys, the credentials, the file formats, all that is persistent. The only thing is that the data is not persisted on, like I said, SQL style data files and the fast storage that is used by that SQL data warehouse, SQL pools, right? Here, like under the covers, right, when I do an external table of nation, you guys can see it's going into my data lake data file, right? It's just right there. It's hammerdb slash nation.tbl file. So that's what it's reading right now when I say select star from nation, right? But it's all supported by SQL. I can then filter it if I wanted to, like I said, select star where the name is like C, so countries that start with the C. I can get Canada and China, right? So it's all fully integrated, and you can also create external tables depending on a definition. So this is a construct that I don't think is available in SQL Server. Maybe it will come at some point, but it's a create external table as. So basically what this does is that it runs a query and then it actually materializes the table as a file. And you can see here something interesting. It gives you the option because it has a different file format. So this table, when it goes and gets saved in this folder, it's saved as a pipe delimited file. But if I wanted to save it as, let's say, Parquet, I can just specify a different name. And then when you run this create external table as, it will materialize the table in that different format using, again, a different select. And then you can see, for example, I already ran this. If we go and browse here, let's go find it, hammerdb CNation1. So if we go back into the data, linked and my storage account, there's a built-in data explorer as well, right? You guys see this? So I can go into hammerdb and you guys see here I have the different files and here's the CSV. Now note, when I created this pipe delimited, you provide a folder, right? And then the rest is managed by the SQL on demand engine, right? The CSV file. If I wanted to open the CSV file, then boot it up here, and you guys can see the contents here, right? This what we expected, right? It's pipe delimited, and it only has Canada and China because we materialized that table using that select where like C, right? So we had a predicate there, right? Obviously, I'm just doing this on a small file that has just a few countries and whatnot, but you could do this at scale with like massive files or massive amounts of data and just materialize. This basically becomes a materialized view. CSV is not, maybe if you want to share it with a partner, then you can share it as a CSV file if that's what they want. But really the more optimized format is Parquet, right? And Parquet is columnar. So Parquet will save schema information on it. It's a columnar type of file and it's also compressed. So in general, it would be more scalable if you really want to save them for, let's say, materialized views that people are going to report on and whatnot, then you would use Parquet instead. And then here you can see it also supports views. So the view definition I already created before, but I can just reuse it just to, again, countries that start with S here, I have Saudi Arabia in my file. The idea again is that the view definition persists, right? Again, SQL is a SQL on demand engine, but all the artifacts that you create persist over time. So it's not like, oh, I'm going to create a view and then only my session has this view, and when my session dies, my view is going to go away. No, it's not what it is. It actually persists over time, and then you can just reuse the views, you can reuse your external tables and whatnot, right? So that's pretty cool. Now, something else that's really neat, and I'm going to show you guys right now, is that if I go back into the data here, and I have a Spark table, for example, I have this Spark table that I define. It's called reviewed businesses. And I go here, you guys see this Spark table gives me two gesture actions, right? It has the new notebook that says you can load it to a data frame, and it'll regenerate that it'll generate that script. But this also has a select here. Valid columns. Is it invalid? Review. City. Counts. State. I don't know why it says the columns are invalid. Anyway, we'll have to let's see what happens if we load it into a data frame. It might be that my Spark cluster. I changed the auto setting, but I didn't run anything after, so maybe that's what it is. And it's just not running right now. But we'll just load it right here. So let's see. Because the definition was already saved. So in the meantime, let me open the Spark notebook as well, and we'll leave it running. This is another thing, is that you can just leave things running here, and it'll keep tabs of what your active sessions are. So I can go back here, and we can run this and show you guys the other Spark notebook, and you can see it's a full Spark experience as well. So I created a database here in Spark. It says Yelp, right? You guys can see in my data browser that I had the Yelp database on Spark. You can use the use command to move the context of your notebook, just like you can do in SQL. Here, I loaded a bunch of files that I have in my data lake over to what's called a data frame. And data frames are basically, like, you can think of them as like temporary tables in Spark type of thing, right? The data frame is a container of data that you put in Spark, and it's something that you will access, but once your Spark session is done, then the data frame will not be available anymore. But then, for example, here you can see I ran a data frame print schema, and here's all the different information. And you can see Spark does something really cool, for example, that if you say infer the schema true, and the CSV has a header, then Spark will look or peek into the data and come up with the schema itself, so you don't have to do it yourself. Right, let's see the notebook here. Oh, there we go. So it does select start from Yelp reviewed businesses. It is there, state, city, review counts. Let's see, maybe now this will work. No, interesting. I'll have to look into it. Why does this suddenly, or is it, oh, is it because of the case? Might be a thing with the GUI then, because this is private preview, guys. So sorry, public preview. So I wouldn't be surprised if this is a case issue and they haven't figured out that they have a case problem. Ah, there it is. All right, so we found the bug. It looks like the GUI is generating the column names always in uppercase, but the engine is case sensitive. So it's so that's what it was. All right, well, mystery solved. Interesting. I'll send a shout out to the guys at Microsoft about this, because obviously it's kind of misleading. But there you go. Now the cool thing then, now that this is actually working, that's just the case, is that this right now I'm using, it's interesting, right? So I'm using the SQL on demand engine, right? But this is a Spark table, right? So, and I just created this Spark table, like I just showed you guys here. I created this Spark table called reviewed businesses. Let me go down to the bottom. So the way that you do this is you say, you have a data frame. I filled up the data frame with this SQL query, and I just wrote it and the Spark database as, save as a table called reviewed businesses. And automatically, this is available here through my SQL on demand by using this syntax of like the Spark database, the schemas DBO, and then the name of the table. But me individually, did not have to do anything to set this up. This was all automatically done by the Synapse Workspace. So if you create another table here inside your Spark database, and I just call it, reviewed businesses X, it will, I just have to go here and, query from reviewed businesses X, and I will be able to access it. So obviously the idea here, the attraction is that even if you create a table on Spark, you'll be able to query it really easy through SQL on demand. So if somebody just likes to do things in the SQL on demand and they don't like to deal with Spark at all, or there's just already the tables have been pre-created on Spark, then they can seamlessly integrate the two of them, okay? And then I'm going to show you guys one last thing really cool that is on this another notebook I have right here. So let me run this. Oh, I had to restart my session. Core capacity. Oh no, this is what happens here. I'm using too many. Let me see. Maybe let's see what happens if we close some of these down. Maybe they'll. Or maybe we just happen to be unlucky and hit some limit right at the moment that no, there we go. Okay, as long as I kill the session. All right, so look at this here. I'll show you guys. Remember I had this linked Cosmos DB service, right? So I create a table here that uses this provider called cosmos.olap, right? And it uses this link server that I already set up, and then this Cosmos container called machines, right? And then if I go to my Cosmos implementation here, just give me a sec while this reloads. You guys see here this is a new feature of Cosmos. It's called the analytical storage. What this does is that all the data inside Cosmos behind the scenes gets turned into a data lake of Parquet files that are then available through Synapse and that you can query through Synapse as well, right? So in this case, for example, I have this container called machines, and then once I define this, I can just run SQL on Spark here. You guys see something cool about the visualizations is that you get the data. And this is data that is coming from Cosmos DB, right? And I have a multi-region Cosmos DB, so you can see, for example, here, this was, I generated this in the Japan region. This is something that I put in intentionally inside my Cosmos schema, so I could show where the data is coming from. But then the idea is to show that here I have a Cosmos table that I just need to specify the proper metadata here. And then after that, I can query it from Spark, right? Again, another tight integration here between different data services. This is called a Synapse link. Right now, it's part of the preview as well. And the idea is that eventually you'll be able to do Synapse links, not just to Cosmos, but for example, to Azure SQL Database for SQL Server, or to Azure SQL Database for MySQL or PostgreSQL, or I can see it being, deployed for many other things down the line as Microsoft develops more in data services, or to stream analytics. We could have a Synapse link to a stream, right? You guys can probably think of the possibilities of what we can do here, right? Pretty neat. All right, so we're at the top of the hour. So this is, I think I covered all the main things I wanted to show you guys. recap, tightly integrated environment of Synapse, lots of different services. There is the idea or the goal to do seamless movement between SQL and Spark, and now also between other services using the concept of the Synapse link. There are new things that are just in Synapse, like the SQL on-demand engine, for example, or the integrated catalog, and it does make it really easy to get up and running, and you don't have to really think about a lot of the architecture that goes behind it, right? Like the how to tie in the data lake storage with the SQL on-demand, with the Spark pools, like all that has been tied in by Microsoft for you. So really, really easy to get up and running, right? I don't know, Pio, do we have any questions?
Let me see.
I can check the chat myself.
The items that you showed us are in private preview or public preview?
This is public preview right now, so there's something to keep in mind. Yeah.
So guys, if you have any questions, you can put them on the chat.
So this is public preview. Yeah, any of you can go in with your account if you have Azure credits, or if you have just your credit card. You know, if you're willing to just pay a little bit of money to learn, then yeah, you can use it today. You just sign up for the public preview and you're up and running really fast. And like I said, you don't have to be afraid of the massive bill, kind of like when people were testing SQL Data Warehouse, because it provisions all the storage under the covers. As long as you don't provision an actual SQL pool and you stay with SQL on demand, you will only be paying for the CPU that you consume. And if you set an auto pause, like a low auto pause for your Spark pool, like I do when I'm just not doing demos, like 10 minutes, then you stop using it. You just use it for a couple of hours in the morning. That's all you pay for. 10 minutes go by, it's auto pauses, and you stop paying for it. So pretty easy to get up and running. I hope most of you guys will give it a spin and try it out. Yeah.
Just a very quick one. What are the data sources that it supports?
It supports anything that integrated to it. I showed you. It's basically the idea, or the most easiest thing to do, is to put data in the data lake storage that is inside the workspace, because then all the integrations work transparently. But through the concept of the linked service, then you basically can bring in data from anywhere, right? As long as you store it eventually in your either in your data lake storage account, or if you have a SQL pool, you can store it inside a dedicated SQL pool, right? That would be like storing it inside a SQL Server table, pretty much the equivalent, right? But if you just bring the data in, I mean, using Data Factory, you can support any data source that Data Factory supports, right? Because it's basically Data Factory embedded inside the Synapse Workspace. I mean, Data Factory supports, I don't know how many connectors at this point, because it supports not only different databases, but it supports like SaaS services too, right? Like Salesforce, Marketo, and all these other companies, ServiceNow, etc. Right? So I would say think of anything that you can get from ADF, then you can integrate it with Synapse by just doing an ADF pipeline that will copy into your data lake storage. And once it's in data lake storage, and there just everything works. Yeah.
Great. Thanks.
Cool. Anything else?
All right, I think that's all the questions that we have. Thank you, Warner, for joining us this episode.
Thanks, Warner.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you guys for joining. Hopefully, this won't be the last one either. Now that you guys, the whole world is going virtual anyway. So hopefully, in a couple of months, have some new material. I'll be sure to talk to Pio and share it with you guys over there. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you.